Let's take a moment as we begin our discussion to review some of what we've talked about so far. We've laid some foundation. I just want to go over some of those things to make sure that we are on the same page. We're talking about passing your tests. And we said that a test is an opportunity to demonstrate my trust in God through my faith. We also said, until I pass my test, I will not be advanced to a position of greater responsibility and influence in God's kingdom economy. We also said, when my bitter cup arrives and I drink it, trusting God, remaining in faith instead of fear or my flesh, I pass my test. God's test asks us one question: do you trust me? Our answer is always revealed in how we handle the cup we've received. CUP is an acronym, reminding us that the test is a challenging circumstance that gives me an opportunity to trust God and remain what? Consistent under pressure. In lesson 1, we looked at how we can pass our test by getting our thinking right. In lesson 2, we looked at how we can pass our test by getting our hearts right. In lesson 3, we looked at how we can pass our tests by getting our perspective right. In lesson 4, we talked about how we can pass our tests by getting our speech right. And then last week, we said, I will pass my test when my praise grows up. And we invited the congregation to graduate from a conceptual or a convenient or a circumstantial praise into a consistent praise that from time to time in the hand of God becomes a conquest. And that brings us to this week. So as we come to this week, we find Yeshua being tempted in the garden. And as we turn into this encounter that he had, we're going to begin in verse number 8 of Matthew chapter 4. The scripture says, again, the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Somebody say worship. Worship. Then Yeshua said to him, away with you, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. So in the time that we have remaining, I want to minister to you from the subject, pass your tests by getting your worship right. Pass your tests by getting your worship right. Last week we talked about passing your test by getting your praise right. This week we want to talk about how to pass your test by getting your worship right. Would you repeat after me? It's time for me to get my worship right. Let's say it again. It's time for me to get my worship right. This is critical. Got to get my worship right. When we look back into Matthew chapter 4, really beginning right around looking at verse 10 or so, verse 9, Satan says to him, all these things I will give to you if you'll but do one thing, if you'll worship me. If you just make a mistake with your worship, I got you. If you look at what I'm showing you and take your eye off your right worship, I got you. If you get distracted by what I'm offering you and lose sight of the fact that it's really a question of worship, I got you. But Yeshua turns to him and says, listen, the word declares, you shall worship the Lord your God and him only. Somebody say only. Only. Somebody say him only. Him only. Him only shall you serve. Then, look at that. He passed his test. It says, then, I put the ellipsis dots in to give a pause, to give a pregnant pause for dramatic effect. It says, then, after he makes a declaration that his worship is right, then he passes his test. How do you know he passes his test? Because the devil left him. And behold, here comes his help. That's when the preachers say, I feel my help coming on. Yeshua probably said, he probably turned and took his ear and said, I feel my help coming on. I will pass my test when my worship is right. Would you say that with me? I will pass my test when my worship is right. Let's say it again. I will pass my test when my worship is right. This is a big one. We got to say it one more time. I will pass my test when my worship is right. If you have not heard any other message, and you do not hear any other message in this series, this is the pivotal point in this message. This is the message on which the entire series spins. You have got to have your worship right. Now, when you hear worship, you might be thinking, Pastor, didn't we talk about worship last week? No, we talked about praying. I'll see if I can help you just a little bit. While praise is about appreciation, worship is about adoration. Praise deals with I appreciate you, and especially what you do and how you do it and all of that. But worship comes to I adore you. I just adore you. So praise is appreciation and worship is adoration. Let me see if I can help you some more. While praise is often expressed in revelry, worship is best expressed in reverence. So in praise, you got to get up and run and shout and jump and do and all these different words for praise. Tehillah and Yada and Toda and Barak and all Shabbat, all those words mean get up and jump and spin and do all kinds of things. But when it comes to worship, worship doesn't mean any of that. Sometimes when you worship, you got to sit yourself down somewhere. In fact, when you come into the moment of worship, sometimes you'll go to church services and as you worship, there's a spirit of worship that falls down on the moment of praise. And when it gets quiet, there's a temptation for people to start yelling out into that quiet. That's not the time for prophecy, and it's not time to be yelling out. It's time to get still and to sense the presence of God. It's what the psalmist was talking about. In Psalm 46, beginning in verse 7, he writes, the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Saleh. Come, behold the works of the Lord, who has made desolations in the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in two. He burns the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I am God. When we come to the place of worship, we come to the place where we become still and reverence God. Now, let's just do a little bit of study on this word worship. Because worship is an English word that we have used to translate some other words in the text. We understand what the words in the text mean and what the word worship. So worship itself, etymologically, is an Old English word meaning worship. Literally, it means worthiness. So when we worship, we acknowledge the worthiness of God. When you worship, you say, God, you are worthy. You are so worthy of my praise. You are so worthy of all glory. You are so worthy of my life. You are so worthy of this sacrifice. To worship is to acknowledge the worthiness of God. The word worship most often translates two words in Scripture. In the Old Testament, the word in Hebrew is shakah. And that word literally means to bow down. In the New Testament, the Greek word is proskuneo. And proskuneo means to bow down and kiss the hand of, like a dog licking the hand of its master. So when we put these together from a biblical understanding, whatever the word worship means in the Old English, when we see it in the context of Scripture, it is calling us to bow down and to kiss the hand of God. To worship, we worship whatever we bow down to. Whatever you bow down to in your life, that's your worship. Whatever you sacrifice for in your life, not just to sacrifice for, but anything that you will sacrifice in particular, your relationship with God for, that's your place of worship. And we worship not only what we bow down to, but we also worship whoever we kiss up to. Whoever we kiss up to is also an act of worship. To bow down and to kiss the hand of, there are those that we kiss up to, run around after, chasing after, trying to get to them. About a year ago, I think it was around our anniversary, I don't remember, but I think it was around our anniversary, I got tickets to go see a singing group that Andrea and I used to listen to when we were back in college. This a cappella group called Take Six, jazz group. They were in the area, and we got concerts, and they were offering VIP tickets. And so I got those, which allowed you to sit in a section closer to the group, and they gave you backstage access. So we were backstage, and we were playing on our heyday. We were checking our farm and making sure our animals were well fed, for that is a critical element of life. And so when we were in the room with another 100 people or so, all of a sudden the doors opened up and in came Take Six. And when they came in, people were running to them and getting autographs and taking pictures and this and that. And Andrea and I were sitting at the table playing our heyday. Because we really didn't come there to get close to Take Six. We came there to get the seats. You know, it was all about the seats. And so people were chasing them and running after them. And she looked at me. She said, "You want to do anything with Take Six?" I said, "Not really." She said, "Neither do I." I said, "Well, let me see what you need. You need help on your farm?" We just sat there. And we were only ones in the room sitting down. Take Six was taking pictures with everybody. Everybody was running up to them. And we were sitting down. Then they were like, "Okay, folks, you can go to your seat now." And we went on out. Never did get close to Take Six. But when they took that stage and that music started coming, we were right there. We were up. We weren't about the people. We're about the ministry. Come on, sing your song. I'll see you on the album cover. Because we weren't trying to kiss up to Take Six. We were just there to enjoy the concert. Are y'all listening to me? Let me talk to you about what worship is not. Worship is not a service that takes place on Sunday morning. Sometimes people, we use that expression. I know I've used it. We put it in print for Kingdom Life Worship Service begins that because people understand that. But really, it's possible for you to come here and not worship at all. You just here. So we almost want to call it something else. But it's not a service that takes place on Sunday morning. Let me talk about what it is. Worship is a choice we make every day. Say that with me. Worship is a choice we make every day. Every day we make choices, and that's worship. With every choice, we make a decision to either worship God or to bow down to something else. With every choice, we make a decision to either worship God or to bow down to something else. And likewise, with every choice, we either make a decision to either worship God or to kiss up to something else. So either we're bowing down or we're kissing up. But if it's not to God, it's still worship. It's just not right worship. Y'all with me? Yeah. There are some words that appear in text that are spoken by the Master. And I believe they give us context for understanding how we can approach the choices we face in life and come away with right worship. They're taken from Matthew chapter 6. And if we just focus on the words that are spoken in verse 33, there's something there that is of value to us. He says, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Now, I don't want to focus on the B part of the verse where it focuses on all these things being added onto you. That's good and that's true. That's just not the focus of what I want you to see. It's that seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. When we look at that and we amplify it out a little bit, I believe that it is telling us to seek first in order and priority the kingdom of God and his righteousness. What do I mean when I say in order? I mean before you seek anything else, seek the kingdom of God. Before you seek anything else, before you call them, before you submit your resume, before you decide that you're going to go out with him on Friday, before you do, because often we do it and then later we're asking God to come in and clean up the mess, but we didn't seek him before. And so seek first means before, in priority and in order. In order, you got to start before you do anything else. Seek God. But the second thing that I believe it means is seek first means priority, meaning that you seek God above everything else. It's not just that you seek God, you get it out of the way, and then you really go after what you want. It's that you seek God above everything else. He is not only first in order, but first in priority. The most important thing in my life is living a life that pleases and honors him. I have to be in the will of God. Anybody believe that? I've got to be in the will of God. If I don't know where I am and I know I'm in the will of God, I'm okay with that. I don't have to have all the answers. I just have to know I'm in the will of God. But if I know where I am and I'm not sure I'm in the will of God, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. I'm very familiar with my location, but I can't find myself relative to God's plan for my life. I'm in trouble. So therefore, I seek first, in order and priority, the kingdom of God and his righteousness. So here's the $64,000 question. Is any decision, is this decision that I'm about to make, is this decision in line with God's will and purpose? Will he be honored by my decision? I am convinced that if we ask that question before making most decisions in our lives, we would make different decisions. Can the church say amen? Amen. Come on, encourage me up here.
Amen.
Is this decision in line with God's will and purpose, and will he be honored by my decision? Am I really considering him in this process? Because if I'm not, then my worship is going to rise. And I am not going to pass my test until I get my worship right. Let's take note of some things that you should know. You should know, first of all, that there are some choices that represent clearly competing interests with the will, word, and way of God. Like, you don't even have to guess about this thing. There are some choices we look at, and they are clearly, you're on a diet, and they bring you triple scoop French vanilla ice cream on top of a brownie drizzled with chocolate. Can you have it on your diet? There is no diet in the world that allows you to have that. But so when you see it, sometimes there are some choices we face, and it's like that. And like Moses, we look right, and we look left, and we get a spoon. The Lord will forgive me. Lord have mercy, this is good. This is good. French vanilla. Who would have thought French vanilla and brownie? I haven't tried that before. Drizzle just running all down your shit. Matthew 6:24 deals with that kind of test. He says, no one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. And then goes on to talk about you cannot serve God and mammon, giving us an illustration of where you can have another God with a small g to stand up in the face of God. Here's the thing I would have you take away from this. Worship is always a matter of mastery. Whatever we do not master is very likely to master us. Worship is always a matter of mastery. Whatever we do not master is very likely to master us. So either you've got to master it, or it will master you. And worship is always a matter of mastery. The second thing I would note here with regard to the choices that we face is that there are some choices that represent a call to obey the word of the Lord even when we cannot see the test involved. Sometimes it's not, a triple scoop of vanilla ice cream on the bread. But sometimes it's more subtle than that. It's not so obvious. It's a test that you can't even see. God is calling you to do something. He's revealed something, either in his written word or in his rhema word. There's some instruction you've got, and you've got to walk it out, but you cannot see all the nuances and potential consequences that are involved if you don't do what God called you to do. It doesn't mean they're not there. It's just not as glaringly obvious. Genesis 22 unveils a story where there's such a test. The scripture says, now it came to pass after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. He said, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love. Sound like competing interests. And go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. He continues on telling the story. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took two of his young men with him and Isaac his son. And he split the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Then on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey. The lad and I will go yonder and worship. he is going to slay his son. And he said, we're going to worship. Y'all listening? He getting ready to go slay his son. And he said, this is what it looks like to worship. The nature of worship is always sacrificial. The nature of worship is sacrificial. There can be no worship without legitimate choice or personal sacrifice. The church is full of praisers, but not too many worshipers. The church is full of praisers, but not too many worshipers. Worshipers walk differently than mere praisers. Because worshipers have been to that mountain. Worshipers have had to leave something. Worshipers have paid a dear price to walk with God. Worshipers are not casual in their relationship with God. It's cost them too much to have it. And that's how you pass your tests. Because anything that threatens what cost you so dearly, you reckon right off the bat, that's got to be a lie. Come on, somebody say amen. Have I got a worshiper in here? You know that's got to be the lie. You mean to tell me this cost me all of that, and you telling me I can have that if I just bow down and worship you? You are a liar. This has cost me too much to be here. Now, if you're just a praiser, and nothing wrong with praise. We talked about it last week. It's powerful. But there's another level of walking with God. If you're just a praiser, then you're giving God thanks for what? But you haven't paid the price. When you worship God, you've been to the fire of sacrifice. You have been to God's altar. And he has stood there as a holy, consuming fire, waiting for you to put down what you hold so dear. That's when you worship. I remember just before the Lord led us into a season of homelessness, I was washing the car, and the Lord told me that I was going to lose my house. And I remember just asking him one question. Why? And his answer was, so that you will fear nothing more than me. And I stood there, and I watched it go. It wasn't in that moment, but in the next few weeks, few months, it was gone. I watched it burn on the altar before a holy God. You talk about trusting God. You're sitting there watching what's precious to you burn, and he's standing there watching it too. You say, Lord, why don't you do something? Why don't you stop this? Why don't you? If you flinch, I'll take something else. Because where I've got for you to go, you cannot go unless there is one God. There can be no other gods before me. Somebody say no other God. Turn to your neighbor, tell them no other God. I'm talking about what it takes to really walk with God. Because you can stay in that outer court. You can come to the labor and you get washed up. You can do all that. But if you're going to come on in, you got to come past that altar. You got to leave a sacrifice. You don't get to come into the Holy of Holies until something is consumed on that altar. You can stay in the encampment and run around and be talking about, we love the Lord, Jehovah. But if you're come in, you got to put something on that altar. This is what it's talking about in Romans 12, verse 1, where Paul writes, I beseech you, I beg you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. You got to put yourself up on the altar. Amen. Holy, acceptable to God. With God standing there watching you do it, you got to put what's most precious to you on the altar. And he says, and don't even make a big deal out of it. All you're doing is your reasonable service. Amen. Another translation is your act of worship. Don't even tell anybody you did it. Because if you're going to walk with me, it's going to cost you something. I paid the price for your salvation, but you got to pay for your fellowship. Worship, church, is a matter of choice between my relationship with this world and my relationship with God. Worship is a matter of choice between my relationship with this world and my relationship with God. I want to talk to you about 5 worship choices that we all face every day. Can I do this? Yes. The first choice that we have, the first worship choice that we have, is my relationship with people, things, and places versus my relationship with the will of God. Where will my scale tip? Are people, my relationships with people, with things, with places, is that more important to me than my relationship with the will of God? Here's the key question that we need to ask and answer. What tempts or causes me to violate the known will of God in my life? Now, I'm not talking about what you don't know. I'm talking about what we know. I'm not talking about the Eve sin. I'm talking about the Adam kind of sin. Where we know that we shouldn't do, that we know that God will cause us away from this, but our relationship with some people, some person, something, some place has got us compromising, and we know we compromise when we do it. What is that? Because anything that's there represents a vulnerability in my life and a place where, if tested, I am likely to fail my test. Are y'all with me? Yes. Choice number 2. The second choice is my relationship with my flesh versus my relationship with my spirit. Which is a greater relationship? My relationship to my flesh, which, by the way, church, includes your feelings. Yeah. Yep. I think, I want, I feel, that's all flesh. Somebody say, I think, I want, I feel. Say, I just think. I feel like. You know what I really want? That's flesh. Oh, all of that's flesh. I just think that's flesh. Well, I feel like that's flesh. All of that is flesh. And so is my relationship with my flesh strong? I just have to express myself. What am I supposed to do with my feelings? Put them on the altar before a holy God and make them a living sacrifice. Say, Lord, they're living. The fact that he said, let it be a living sacrifice, there's supposed to be some life in it. So your feelings are supposed to be squirming as you put them on the heat. He doesn't want a dead thing after you got over it. Now you're going to bring it to the Lord? Well, I'm over it now, Lord. I'm going to give it to you. He doesn't want it. He wants it kicking and screaming, has to be tied down. When it's alive and you're filled with rage and vengeance and payback, that's when you take it and you give it to him. You say, God, not my will, but your will. And you tie it down and it becomes an act of worship. So the question becomes, what tempts or causes me to walk in the flesh when I could choose to be led by my spirit to walk in the spirit? Choice number 3. The choice between my relationship with the fallen me versus my relationship with the real me. Somebody say, will the real me stand up? Come on, will the real... See, sometimes we have come to the point where we've lived with the fallen me so long that when the real me comes along, you can actually have what I call fear of success. They tell you slavery's over, you can go, and you lock the door. Say, I'm going to stay on the floor. They say that there was a dog that they had put a collar on, and or they had one of those electric fences, and he would go out and there was an invisible fence, and when he got to a certain point, they would zap him, and he would go back. They would zap him, he would go back. They would zap him, he would go back, and finally they turned off the fence. They said, well, the fence is not on. Will the dog get out? The man said, he'll never leave. He'll never leave for fear of being zapped. Some of us, the real us, the free us, the us that God sees, the us made in the image and likeness of God, the renewed us, the anachronosis us, the one that God has called and ordained and has planned for and purpose. That us is trying to get out, and we're stuffing them in because we're okay with the old me. Well, you know I've always been. You ever hear people talk like that? Come on now, wave at me. You ever get everybody waving, does it too? We say, you know, I've always been squat. I've always been kind of insecure. I've always been. Well, what? Maybe that's the old you. Maybe that's the fall in you. Maybe that's that. So you ask the question here: what tempts or causes me to settle for living with the fall in me when I could be walking in the real me? Worship choice number 4. We face these every day. My relationship with the familiar lie versus my relationship with the new truth. Oh, they always call me Pookie. That's not your name. But they've been calling me Pookie so long, I'm just going with it. Because I live with the old lie instead of coming into the new truth. Well, they're my family. I don't want to tell them, call me, Cleveland, Roosevelt the Fourth. I don't want to go through all that. Educate them. Educate them. I'm thinking about that lady from The Color Purple. She said, my name ain't whatever she said. My name ain't Squeak. Something Squeak. Something she said, my name ain't Squeak. That was a powerful moment. I was like, praise God. Tell my name, man, Agnes. Praise God. Praise your name, girl. Some of us need to have that come to Jesus meeting with our family at the next reunion. Some of them don't even know your name. I got cousins call my brother. At his funeral, when we say something out and tell them they're not going to come. Because they've been waiting to hear their brother die. Because that's all they know. Brother, sister, cuz, that's all they know. My name is John A. Thompson. Exactly. Good to meet you, cuz. What's your name? Live with the old lie. Because it's familiar. We just live with it. Sit in that same seat with those same slippers, with those same old worn out things. Years ago, I used to have a red plaid shirt. That was my go-to. I don't know where that shirt is. Y'all talk to me after the service. One day I looked up, that shirt had been set free. I think that shirt went to heaven. I think it was born again. Key question here is, What tempts or causes me to settle for the lie I've known for so long rather than accepting the truth of God's word? Number 5. My relationship with this world's culture versus my relationship with the kingdom life. I got to stay there for a minute.
Yes, he does. Amen.
My relationship with this world's culture versus the kingdom life. I'm talking about just going along to get along. I'm talking about being like everybody else, where if you don't tell people you're a Christian, they wouldn't guess that there was anything different about you. Because the way you live, the way you act, just everything else about your life looks like everybody else. Because we have been taught at the wrong tree, okay? And so we're thinking as long as it's not bad, it's okay. But it's worldly and it's not God-honoring, and we should be living a life that is strikingly upright in a world that's bent over. But very often we're not. We look just like everybody else, and we want to look like everybody else. Because we want to fit in. The worst possible thing you can do is put yourself in a position where people around you reject you because you're different. But God has called us. He saved us to be a peculiar people. He made you strange. He made you strange. Yeah, I'm strange. I'm also born again. And the moment, and if being strange comes with being born again, then I'm just going to be weird. Okay, I'm strange. He made me a peculiar people. So I can't be like everybody else. I cannot run with the world and walk with God. Are y'all hearing me today? Yes. The question that comes up here is, what tempts or causes me to settle for fitting into the world when I could be living victoriously in Christ? Scripture is very clear regarding the definitive nature of true worship. In Matthew 15, beginning in verse 7, the Lord, retorting to some people, says, "Hypocrites! Well did Isaiah prophesy about you, saying, these people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men." He said there's such a thing as vain worship, where you're just going through the motions. You say that you're seeking first the kingdom, but in reality, you are not. In John chapter 4, he talked to a woman about right worship. He met this woman at the well. The woman said to him, beginning in verse 19, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship." Yeshua said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father." I told you, worship is not an act, it's choices you make. He goes on and says, you worship what you do not know. You don't even know what you're talking about. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Well, the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit. And those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So it made me wonder, what is this he's talking about, worshiping in truth? What's this coming? Where is he pulling this from? And I thought about the words of our brother Joshua, who enjoined the people that he led to make a choice for God. In Joshua 24, verse 14, the scripture says, "Now therefore fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and in truth. There it is. And put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt. Serve the Lord. And if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods of your fathers, which your fathers served, that were on the other side of the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Yes. He makes a declaration. He says, you got to choose. You want to know what it means to worship the Lord in spirit and truth? You want to know what it means to serve him in truth? You got to make a choice. It says it's not in you attending a service. It's not in the act. It's not in lighting the candle. It's in the choice that you make. And in the couple minutes that I have left, I want to just talk to you, share with you 4 lessons on right worship from Joshua 24:14 to 15. The first thing we see as we go into the text is that he tells us, now therefore fear the Lord. Somebody say, fear the Lord.
Fear the Lord.
I will pass my test when my worship is right. And I will tell you that right worship begins with a healthy fear of the Lord. If we don't have any fear of God, we love to talk about what a friend we have in Jesus, but we need to know that our God is a consuming fire. And if you're going to have right worship, it begins with the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If you're going to make choices in your life that will honor God, it begins with a healthy fear of the Lord. But then it goes on and says, back into the text, it says, now after you fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and in truth. Here we say, right worship begins with a healthy fear of the Lord, but continues with a commitment to serve him sincerely and completely. Back into the text we go again, where he says, now if you serve him, fearing the Lord, serving him in sincerity and in truth, he says, the next thing you need to do is put away the gods which your father served on the other side. That brings us to point number 3. The third thing I would tell you is that if you've got your fear of the Lord straight, you made a commitment to serve him in sincerity and sincerely and completely, then right worship requires that one put away all other gods. How do you know you have another God in your life? You have another God in your life when you have a competing interest. We have something that competes against God's placement in our lives. We have something else that rears up against God and challenges our commitment to God, challenges our walk before the Lord, challenges our devotion to the Lord, challenges his place and value in our lives. That's another God asking for your homage. Back into the text. And then he tells us in verse 15, and again down at the end of verse 15, he said, but choose. If it seems evil to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. And at the end he said, but as for me and my house, we choose to serve the Lord. And I take you back to the 4th lesson here. Right worship is ultimately lived out when one chooses for oneself to serve the Lord. I'm going to put them up there as a recap for those of you who are trying to capture that. As we wrap this message and consider these things, let's say this together. I will pass my test when my worship is right. Let's say it again. I will pass my test. When my worship is right. Tell somebody next to you, you will pass your test when your worship is right. Let's say it together. We will pass our test when our worship is right. We call this passing your test. by getting your worship right. I want to pray and then give you an opportunity to respond to the word that you've heard. Father, we thank you for this opportunity that you've given us. Consider our worship. We can pass our test, but our worship has to be right. We have to have our worship right in order and priority. We have to be seeking you and your righteousness. We have to pull down all the other gods and choose for ourselves whom we will serve. But we know, Lord, we thank you for the encouragement that when our worship is right, we will pass our test. We pray a blessing upon all who hear this word, that you will help us get our worship right. That we will live for your honor and your glory. And as we face those worship choices each day, we will choose you, your will, your truth, the kingdom, the real us, and the Spirit. Thank you, Father, for this word, this truth that makes us free. In the name of Yeshua.